Hello and welcome to Literati. It's where we delve into the world of literature, African stories, and showcasing the brightest and rising African storytellers, poets, and writers. I'm your host, Judith Atibi. On today's show, we have the honor of hosting an extraordinary woman whose voice has been a beacon of activism, advocacy, and profound reflection on the issues that matter most, particularly women's rights, gender equality, and social justice. Our guest is none other than Irelu Bisi Adeleye-Fayemi. She is a distinguished Nigerian author, activist, and former First Lady of Ekiti State. With a career spanning decades in the development sector, Mrs. Fayemi has used her platform to address critical issues affecting women, children, and marginalized communities. She is the author of Where Is Your Rapper? It's a collection of essays which blends powerful storytelling with sharp social commentary, first published in 2020. She's also the author of Demand and Supply, also a collection of essays published in 2023, and also an anthology of short stories and poetry, and it's called A Tray of Locust Beans, and it was published in 2023 as well. All three books is what we're going to be reviewing today. We're going to be touching on a variety of topics, including women's empowerment, political engagement, and the fight against gender-based violence and the pursuit of equality. Now, each essay is a testament of her keen insights, personal experiences, and unwavering commitment to bringing about change in Nigerian society. And ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome my guest. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. And first, let me just get started by asking about how you managed to do this. Just looking at your resume and preparing for this, one thing is clear: you juggle a lot, right? From being a politician, being a first lady, handling your writing as well, and also doing activism and advocacy on the side, plus your work with gender-based violence. One has to ask, where do you find the time to write? And you churn out every essay once or twice a week. How do you do that?
Thank you, Judith. Well, you create the time for the things that matter to you. You left one publication out, though. You left out Loud Whispers.
Forgive me. Yes, there's Loud Whispers here as well. Forgive me. It's also a collection of essays that was also from your website, abovewhispers.com.
Yes. I've been writing for a very long time, but in 2016, I set up Above Whispers, the website, and I committed to writing a weekly column called Loud Whispers. And every 2 to 3 years, I pull together all my entries, my essays, the short stories and poetry into a volume. So I have 3 volumes of Loud Whispers, and Loud Whispers is volume 1. Where Is Your Rapper is volume 2, and Demand and Supply is volume 3. And then I have the anthology you spoke about earlier, A Tray of Locust Beans, which is a collection of all my short stories and poetry over a period of time, already published in other spaces, but I decided to put it together into one publication.
That's fantastic. Which we're going to get into. The fact that you have 4 volumes plus an anthology, altogether inclusive, and it's all about your work spanning years of you writing and advocating. It is wild to me. And I think I should start picking up essays. But let's start with, picking up writing essays, I would say. But let's start with A Tray of Locust Beans. And this is a collection of not just short stories as well, but also poetry. And it's just deeply rooted in the Nigerian culture. And when you hear the word A Tray of Locust Beans, I have to ask, why, this title, and what does it signify? And what's the symbol behind it, A Tray of Locust Beans?
Well, the title is from one of the entries in the anthology. And I decided to call it that because the story is based in a rural community in Ekiti State, where many elderly women sell locust beans, known locally as Iru. And they do this because the way a lot of Yoruba women are brought up, we are made to believe that livelihoods and economic independence is extremely important. And that's why at whatever age women are supposed to be gainfully employed doing something. The thing about locust beans is, for those who are familiar with it, it has a smell that's not particularly attractive.
It's not fun.
So your first reaction when you smell locust beans is to wrinkle your nose, like, I don't think so. But then when you put it into soups and stews, then the taste, is really nice. Right? And so for me, it's symbolic of how Mabel's life in the story turned out. There's a lot to wrinkle your nose about. Not just about her own particular story, but the story of millions of girls in our communities. And so then the question is, so then what would your locust beans be like for you? Would it be something that repulses you or gets you to wrinkle your nose? Or will it be something that ends up tasting nice because you've used it for your stew?
This same book brings out the collective experiences of women while celebrating their individualities as well. How do you balance these perspectives in your writing? One talking about, the experiences of women and how they struggle in Nigerian culture, and also the other celebrating their individuality. How are you able to do the two and separate them?
Every woman has a story. The stories, of course, vary, they differ depending on their context, but we have stories of our challenges, our trials and tribulations, our triumphs. And regardless of what we go through as individual women, there's a point at which, as a collective, there's a narrative that is woven.
Right.
And the narrative that is woven about a lot of the women I describe in my short stories and my essays is about resilience, about how to not only accept that challenges will be there and that there will be difficult situations that need to be navigated, but that we always need to be open to avail ourselves of the resources that we might find along the way. It could be the solidarity of other women. It could be someone who feels that they need to be there for you to support you in one way or the other. So our individual stories of who and what we are also a part of our collective story as women of how we manage our lives in our communities, how we act as mothers, as spouses, as leaders, and so on. And the fact that we get told throughout our journeys, whether our journeys are good ones or challenging ones, that there's a limit on what we can do, what we can say, where we can be, how we can move. Patriarchal norms and values keep dictating every aspect of how we engage with our communities. So these stories are important to be told because they tell us what the power of each woman is and how collectively we can come together to address all these issues and still live to tell the tale.
Yeah, speaking of issues, all of your books address very sensitive, pressing issues like gender insecurity, rape, systemic failures, and when reading them, they're very, very heavy themes. I wonder, how are you able to approach writing, without overwhelming your readers? How are you able to put it there without even overwhelming yourself? Because this are years in writing all these essays in all these books, years, stories that go as far back, and social issues that go and rooted in real life scenarios that go as far back as 2018, 2017. And that's a long time coming. How are you able to do that?
There are stories in there that go back even longer than that. There are stories there from my childhood, from what I observed going on around me. It's life, Judith. Life for many women in our communities can be hard, can be harsh. It's full of challenges. Yes, there's a lot to be joyful about. There are a lot of milestones that are celebrated with a lot of happiness and a sense of fulfillment and all that. But women go through a lot. Men do as well, but I focus primarily on trying to tell the stories of women. Are they overwhelming? Maybe. But as I said, you said it yourself, that's real life for you. And what I want anyone reading any of these stories to ask themselves is Do you know a Mabel from a tree of locust beans? Do you know a Sharon who's dealing with mental health issues from red tomatoes?
Right.
Do you know a Bomber from If Only? And if you do, and I would like to assume that everyone does, the question we then need to ask, after that is, what can I do if someone like this is in my life, or if I know someone like this? Am I just going to sit by idly and say, this woman's story is too much for me, I can't engage?
Right.
These stories speak to what these women have been, what they have gone through, and what every woman who is in that situation now is going through. So what can we do? What does it mean to us?
Away from the themes, in a tray of locust beans, you switch in your style of writing. One part is, poetry. The other is, a short story. And not every writer is able to do that. Coming from a background as a literary criticism, not everybody is able to do that. Be able to shift between poetry and prose in an anthology. They can only do one, or do a collection of short story, or do poetry, and they make the verses longer and make the stanza, but they never are able to switch between the two. And so how did you decide which format best was for you to serve a particular story? Because there are different stories and different women and different things you're trying to portray, very heavy themes. How were you able to choose that? Was there a vehicle, as vehicles of delivering your creativity? Do you also have a preference? Would you prefer essays or short story or poetry?
Yes. Well, I believe I started out as an essayist. Loud Whispers is a weekly column, and I use it to address a whole range of issues. It could be a commentary on things happening around me or things I've experienced,
right.
And so on. But after a while, and you're writing every week. Mm-hmm. And yes, people are reading what you're writing, and it's pretty straightforward. Just
right.
write an essay that's not more than 2,000 words, because if it gets longer than that, then people are going to start. Attention spans are pretty short these days.
Right.
But then I started to ask myself, won't people get bored, reading an essay from me every week? And I've always teaching poetry, always. So I then started to do a bit more poetry. And then I decided to try my hand at short stories as well. Again, based on things that I've seen around me or real life episodes that I've been directly involved in or I've witnessed at close quarters. And so every week when I want to write, it depends on what I want to write about. It just comes to me. And I don't want to sound like, a crazy person who says I hear voices in my head. But
I hear voices in my head.
Yes, but when I sit down to write, things just come to me. And I think, okay, this week I'm going to write it as a poem, or I'm going to write it as a conversation. I've written all kinds of strange things. Sometimes I've had conversations, I've done lunch dates, I've done dinner conversations, I've done debates, and so on. But I think it's important to be able to use different formats to engage an audience, especially if you're writing something on a weekly basis. And you want people to be able to see something new and interesting every week. And very interesting, because there's so many essays and very good ones, it's hard to pick. But one thing is certain from all of your collections is you've reflected women who have influenced you and who have also shaped history. Women like, Toni Morrison, and even our very own late Mrs. Kudirat Abiola. And so how did their lives and work influence, your writing? What influenced you to think about other women? Whoever we are as women today, regardless of all the challenges that we face trying to get certain things done, whoever we are as women, the spaces we occupy have been made possible by women who have gone ahead of us. And that is why when I hear a lot of young people say feminism is irrelevant, the women's liberation movement is only good for breaking up families and all that, all those backward conversations. And I wrote an essay, Shalaye Olympics. I think that's in demand and supply.
Yes, in demand and supply.
I said we need to understand that we stand on the shoulders of people who have gone ahead of us. Women like Toni Morrison, at the time that Toni Morrison was writing, we had very few black people in the United States writing, occupying those literary circles she was occupying. And she was not just writing as a black person, she was writing as an extremely talented writer. She went on to win the Pulitzer Prize and then the Nobel Prize.
Right.
And when she wrote that story, Beloved, about the experiences of a black woman who was a slave, and the kind of mental trauma that that meant for her, to the point where, as far as she was concerned, it was better for her not to bring a child into this world than to have her child go through what she was going through from the perspective of a woman who was enslaved.
Right.
There are very few women who have had that opportunity to use their global platform in that way. And then, of course, closer to home, there are so many heroes that we have, that we've had around who have inspired us. And the late Kudirat Abiola is one of them, someone who stood up for what she believed in, and unfortunately, she paid the ultimate price. I think, for me, in terms of all the other women I celebrated in my writing, whether it's Toni Morrison or Maya Angelou or the late singer Aretha Franklin and so on, we need to be able to celebrate people, especially women, while they are still with us. Learn what we can about them. And even if they happen to have passed on, if we hear their names, let us go back and read whatever it is we can, because in their stories, in their words, there are things that can inspire generations to come.
The whole thing I enjoy is spending a lot of time with older women, because those women enjoy themselves. I've never seen... they have adult money, you know what I mean? Like, they have grown-up money, so they're able to enjoy themselves in the best way possible. And so I enjoy having to spend time with older women as well. I think I have more older women as friends than younger women, but yeah.
It's good to have older women as friends. There is an essay in Where's Your Rapper called Teenagers.
Right.
I went for a conference in Liberia. It was the closeout, part of the closeout ceremonies for President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So I was there for a weekend, and I found myself with the company of these much older women in their 70s and 80s, and I happened to be the youngest amongst them. And at the time, I was in my late 50s, and so I was the one helping them with their internet issues and all that. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And the time I had with them, the wisdom they shared, the way they comported themselves, the way they looked after themselves, the grooming, what they ate, and so on. They were absolutely, and they called themselves teenagers. And when I asked them, what does that mean? They said, because we've seen it all.
Yeah.
Right. So we are teenagers.
They're sublime.
So I recommend that everyone should have a teenager in their lives.
Oh, yes. The Gen Zs will call them sugar guardian or something. The Gen Zs are just weirdos. We'll go to a short break. When we come back, you're watching Literati, by the way, here on News Central Television. My guest today is Irelu Bisi Adeleye-Fayemi. She's the former First Lady of Ekiti State and also the author of the book, A Tray of Locust Beans, Demand and Supply, Loud Whispers, and not to forget, Where is Your Rapper? After the break, we asked the question, where is your rapper? Stay here, don't go anywhere.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV. Stories that put Africa first.
welcome back to Literati here on New Central Television. It's all about literature, African storytelling, African poems, and this time essays as well. I'm joined by my special guest. I have the pleasure and honor of having our guest today in the studio, the former First Lady of Ekiti State. She is none other than Irelu Bisi Adeleye-Fayemi. She's the author of the books Where is Your Rapper? Where is Your Rapper, actually? There's also Demand and Supply, there's Loud Whispers, and an anthology. It's called A Tray of Locust Beans. And it's just been a sublime conversation, getting to a mind and talking about advocacy, activism, equality, women's rights, and feminism. Once again, thank you so much for still being here with us. We're going to get into another book, which was published in 2020. And it's also a collection of your essays as well, which is Where is Your Rapper? Now, the title is also an essay, Where is Your Rapper, which you narrate and you document a scene that you saw in Uganda. There we go, Kampala, Uganda. It was in a market. I'm not going to give away too much of the book, but something happened and the women pulled out their rapper, and you decide to ask the question, and they pulled out their rapper in solidarity of a woman who was in dire need, you know, and so you emphasize solidarity and protection among women, you know, and I would like, and you also put out a question, right? Whilst you were asking, you put out a call to action about women standing in solidarity of other women, but also to the men as well, to bring out their rappers. And so I have to ask you, you know, how can men also bring out their rappers? Because in a time that we are in, where there's red pill content, there's more and more and more conversations about misogynistic takes, content, and we're in a time where an ever-changing time that is now shifting, as we can see from what's going on with the socio-political narrative, not just here in Nigeria, but also in the Western world, America to be precise. How can men contribute to creating a more empathetic and supporting environment for women?
Well, I believe both men and women have to bring out their rappers. If men don't have a rapper, they have agbadas. And
those ones are big.
The story I told, and men's rappers and their agbadas are much bigger.
Yeah, they're big.
Because they are the ones who control all our political, economic, social, and social systems that keep women silenced and marginalized. Where is Your Rapper is a metaphor for, as you put it, solidarity, protection, support. A woman went into labor in the marketplace in Uganda. I happened to be in Uganda at the time when this happened, and I was there for a training program. And the women around, we couldn't stop talking about it. The women in the marketplace started to help this woman. There was no time to get her to a healthcare facility. So they started to help her deliver the baby. And those who didn't know how to deliver a baby simply brought out their wrappers to shield the woman from prying eyes. So for me, and so I wrote that up as one of my weekly essays, and I sent it out, and I was shocked at the response it got from all around the world, not just Nigeria.
Right.
So it resonated deeply with people. It is a call to action, and it is about us trying to address our own humanity. What makes us human? Is it the titles that we have, the clothes that we wear, the positions that we occupy? Or how much empathy, how much compassion, how much love, how much support we have for the next person? Bringing out your rapper is not about how much you can do for the next person in terms of material things. It's about just being there as a human being. A prayer, a kind word, sometimes even silence can serve as a rapper.
Right.
So the next time young people go online and they want to jump on the bandwagon to abuse or insult someone, what do they cost you to just wait a minute, just hold on, take a deep breath, and be silent and not do it? So I think all of us, both men and women, have a role to play in that. And the thing about rappers is the more rappers you bring out, rappers of support, compassion, empathy, in whatever way you can, the more might come out for you on the day that you need them.
And you also talk about, solidarity in terms of sisterhood. And there's a narrative that we have, or a connotation that women don't support women. And I always say, but men also don't support men. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see that often. It's not every man that comes out to vote for a man. You know, they also choose who their guy is and who they also have the same as women do. But how do you believe sisterhood can, strengthen our Nigerian society today? And do you think that the sisterhood space is shrinking?
There's an essay in Loud Whispers around what you've just said, 10 myths about feminists, and it includes some of the issues you've just raised. Women, women saying women are their own worst enemy, or actually it started from men saying women are each other's worst enemy. As women, we need to understand first and foremost that we don't have to be each other's worst enemy. We have an enemy, and that enemy is not men. That enemy is patriarchy. And that's what we should all be fighting against. If you happen to be in a position, of authority, for example, and you are capable of making certain decisions that can have an impact on the lives, of people around you, what can you do to ensure that you do certain things to make the lives of the women around you better? Are you in a position to help pass laws, to help put policies in place, to help set up programs or systems that can support another woman? And yes, we are all human beings. We make mistakes. We are not infallible. Should there be a time when a sister does or says the wrong thing, then we don't need to respond by dehumanizing. You can agree with people. You can disagree with people without dehumanizing them, without making them out to be less than humans or animals and so on. You can simply just be silent or walk away. I've been in those situations many times. So as women, it is important for us to understand that solidarity is key. Mm-hmm. If we want society at large or men to take us seriously, we need to start by setting an example that we can work with other women, we can support other women. And if for any reason that is a problem, silence is a very effective strategy. Silence and disengagement is very effective. But we should not find ourselves in the business of cheering each other down, because no one goes around saying that men are their own worst enemy.
Right.
And if we've had a man in a position of leadership who has failed us, no one goes around saying no man should ever
become president again,
or become president again, or become governor again.
Right.
But we, as soon as a woman makes a mistake, then we all jump on the bandwagon, women inclusive.
Right.
If you note, anytime there's an issue with a woman online, the majority of those who will come up against this woman are other women, and it's not supposed to be that way.
Right.
So particularly young women should learn. No matter what this woman has done, maybe mistakes have been made. As I said, silence. Don't be one of the first people to jump on there and passing judgments and body shaming and cursing and all that. It's totally uncalled for.
As we wrap up this conversation, I'd like to talk about back to a tray of locust. There was a locust beans. There's a couple of essays in there as well. There's no strangers here. Please help us beg them. And it reflects on societal failures, whether it's from health crisis to the #EndSARS protest, which happened in 2020. And I have to ask, and I've asked many authors who are essayists and who in some way document our history, whether it's through social commentary or just writing as is, or fictionalizing that era or that time. What role do you believe literature plays in holding society accountable? Can it hold society accountable?
Yes, literature does have that role. Writing is important as far as that is concerned. And writers over time have acted as custodians of history, as a conscience, as truth tellers, as of course, as well as being storytellers. Yes, writers, like everyone else, are entitled to their own opinions, and not all opinions are facts or right. But it's important for writers to document things as they see them.
Right.
So that when there are people coming behind, they can have a sense of what happened, from a particular point of view, and if they have access to other literature on the same subject, then they can compare notes. When I write, I just simply try to document the things I have seen, the things I have experienced, the things I've been a part of, or try and analyze some of the things that are going on around me. I don't mean it to be taken as the gospel truth. These are just my own observations or my own experiences. But it's important for memory. Memory is extremely important.
Right.
We are very good at forgetting things easily. So it's important to document for those reasons. It's important to tell stories. It's important to highlight successes and triumphs. And it's also important to talk about failures as well, so that we can all do better. And, that's not supposed to be the case. So we need to be able to do what we can to make this world a world in which everyone has value, everyone has a voice, and everyone can contribute to the development of the nation, not just a particular gender.
I must say this has been, I have goosebumps. So thank you so much. This has been quite the discussion. I am so thankful for you coming on, and this has been an honor for me. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Judith.
My guest today is Irelu Bisi Adeleye-Fayemi. She's the author, Where is Your Rapper? Also the author of a tray of locust beans, and also a Demand and Supply and Loud Whispers. Go grab the book anywhere you can find a bookstore, and just go there and grab the book and just educate yourself at the end of the day and understand that equality matters and the rights of women do matter. Feminism is not about the hatred of men, it's about women, for women, and for the betterment of our society. Well, thank you so much for watching. This has been Literati here on News Central Television. My name is Judith at TV. I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.